Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Creative Writing Podcast. I hope everyone's been well. The theme of today's episode is meeting a character. This is something that's probably the most common thing we have to do in fiction, right? Is introduce our main character to other people and all of the influences and ideas and relationships that then ensue. If you haven't listened to one of these before, this is a creative writing workshop, so you'll need a pen and a piece of paper. There'll be lots of large periods of silence, and those are an invitation for you to put words on the page. I'm not just going to give out writing advice for 40 minutes. The idea is that you finish this session with something that you've written that you can then improve upon and develop and inspire you to write the next thing. We're going to jump straight into a warm up, and a quick reminder, the idea of a warm up is that you write your words down, you keep writing, you don't worry about sentence construction or how good the words are, you just experience a sense of momentum. You want to get that feeling that the words are coming one after the other. And that is a really core part of the writer's toolkit, is just to be able to get the words down on the page, and we can worry about making them into more interesting and more communicating kind of words afterwards. So for this warm up, I want you to imagine that you're in any busy place, and it might be useful to imagine a place that you know really well, so like your local cafe or pub or market or a shopping mall or whatever, and you're overhearing a really annoying conversation. How much of that conversation makes it onto the page is up to you. Maybe you want to focus more on reacting to it, but we're just going to do 6 or 7 minutes now, and you are in a busy place overhearing an annoying conversation. And if your warm up is going great, then you can ignore this. But if you need a refocus, perhaps you become aware that you're not the only person finding this conversation annoying. Your main character can make eye contact with other people in this space or notice the general vibes of the room about this very annoying conversation. And in the last 30 seconds of our warm up exercise, we might work on bringing it to an intentional close. That might be the end of a line of dialogue, the completion of a description. Perhaps there's some nugget in here that's surfaced in your brain that you haven't managed to get down on paper, and you'll quickly scribble down a few notes about what that might be so that you can come back to it at another time. And if today something in this has kicked you off into a huge flight of imagination, then obviously press pause and carry on for as long as you like. I'll still be here when you get back. But if you're finishing with me, then we'll bring it to a close and we'll put our pens down, lean back and have a think about this moment in fiction where your main character meets other characters. Of all the things that happen in fiction, this is probably the most common across all books, all genres, all stories. The vast majority of mainstream genres involve your character meeting other characters. So feeling very confident and skilled about that aspect of writing, about that scene that you're going to conjure up, I think gives you is a big step forward if you've never sort of stepped back and thought about it before. And new people have just appeared on the page because you needed them for your plot and the emotional journey of your main character. Actually stepping backwards and thinking, this is something I'm going to do all the time. If I was a potter, I would have to attach, the handle to the main part of the mug over and over again. And it would be worth getting really good at that craft aspect, the physical elements of it. It would have similarities every time. And I do think that meeting new characters as a writer will have similarities every time in your craft, even though what you're conjuring for the reader is a fantastic new experience with brand new characters. And meeting new characters is one of the common elements of fiction because We live in societies. We're social creatures. Our families are important to us. Our friendships are important to us. Our enemies and bosses and strangers are all important to us. And in some ways, we construct our sense of identity out of the opinions and thoughts and sort of information and opinions that other people provide to us. And I have done previous episodes on blissful solitude, and I think that that's why solitude can be so amazing, is because when we're around people, when we can get this kind of constant noise of all of their thoughts and feelings as well. And in fiction, it might be your main character's relationships with other people might be your entire plot. It might be all about how their society views them, what their place in their family is, how they are able to manipulate, control, gain power. That's all about other people, or how they're able to overcome an enemy. An enemy is another person as well. And obviously, when I say person for the fantasy writers, I also mean, dragon, talking bird, sea serpent, mythical creature. I'm using person to stand in for all of those things. We don't want to be reductive in the idea of meeting new characters. So what's interesting to note here is that your readers do not know the importance of a new character at a first meeting. So your main character is going through their day, they're attempting potentially to achieve some goal that the plot has set them, and they will come across these new people. You, as the writer, might understand this is a character who will have a lifelong impact on the main character and be a new friend or helper or mentor. But the reader doesn't quite know yet, is this someone I am dismissing, sort of, but we're just going to get through this interaction and never see them again, or they're going to become very real and important. So one of the things you might want to do is begin to think about flagging importance during that first meeting. There's one huge outlier here, which is in romance, the main character of the romance meets the person that they will fall in love with, and potentially, if you've got two alternating points of view, that happens from both those points of view. It's such a huge moment that we are going to kind of set it to one side for today. And also, I'm not a romance writer. But if you write romance and you want to play with that and use this workshop to play with that, then by all means go ahead and play. But I think, like, in terms of the plot and the structure of things, what we're talking about is today is when your main character could meet any other character at any point in the story. Let's then get back to a little bit of writing, because that's what we do best. And then at the end, obviously, we'll stop and reflect on what we've done. I want you to imagine a busy setting. And if you did last week's workshop on meeting a new place, then obviously you can use the place that we created in last week's workshop. So this setting might be something like a market or a party or an open space, the beach, the woods, somewhere kind of public where we might bump into a new person and to discover that they're important. So what I would like you to do is to begin writing with a few words on that place, and don't worry, the character's coming along really soon. But let's just do a couple of minutes reminding ourselves of that place and what it might look like and what it might feel like, what the temperature might be like. If you are working with a main character because you have something in development, then this is an interesting exercise for them. And if you don't, if you're like, but Meg, I don't know what I'm writing about, then just pick a person, pick a name and an age. They could be Patricia, who is 31, or 89. And we'll discover everything about your main character. They'll make themselves known on the page, don't you worry. So we've got a main character and they are walking through a place. You can decide as well whether you're writing in the first person, as in I, or third person, as in he, she. Right. That's me for a couple of minutes, just while you remind yourself or you locate yourself and your main character and your readers in this physical space. And now someone in this space is going to walk up to your main character and they're going to ask him a question. Please refrain at the moment from describing any of the physical characteristics of this new person. We'll just abandon that because this is a writing session. We don't need to know what they look like. Your main character is going to have an extreme reaction to this person, a very strong opinion immediately. Potentially they're attracted to them. Maybe they have a feeling of instant friendship, but maybe it's suspicion about why this character has come up to them, or some kind of, slight aversion there. They may be frightened of them, or they just instantly feel like, oh, you're not my kind of person. Let's just have a couple of minutes sitting in judgment. And this is mean, but we're going to let your character do it. Judgment of this new person. Now we're going to allow this new person to trigger a memory. So they remind your main character of something or someone from their past. Perhaps it's a kindly grandparent, so it gives your main character and this new person a sort of sense of instant connection. Perhaps it's a rude and judgmental teacher who always made your character feel on the back foot. Perhaps it's a scary neighbour from down the street. Or maybe it's more of a place or an idea, or a transition or an object. But something about this new person that they're meeting triggers a memory in your main character that will affect their relationship. Now, if you haven't been writing any dialogue for a while, then let's just spend a couple of minutes developing this conversation between these two people. So this person came up and asked your main character a question. Just spend literally 1 minute with some back and forth. Perhaps your character has an answer, perhaps they don't know, but the conversation develops between them. And for the first time, your main character is going to notice that this new person they're meeting has really good hair. And you can interpret that in any way, physical way that you want. And if you're writing a non-human character, you can transpose it into any other physical feature that you want. But this really amazing hair potentially inspires a little bit of jealousy in your main character. It can be sort of good jealousy or bad jealousy. That again is up to you. And then let's return to the conversation between these two people. But as this conversation develops, it's going to develop in a way that allows your main character to think that this person might not be what they initially judged. So if they were very attracted to this person at the beginning of meeting them, perhaps they have a growing sense of suspicion. If they met this person from a place of fear or anxiety, perhaps they experience a growing sense of warmth towards them. But we'll just let this encounter play out for the last few minutes of today's session. we're going to bring the session to a little bit of a close and do something slightly different that we don't normally do. If this is flowing really well for you and it's kicked off a lot of ideas and you need a few more minutes, then do hit pause. If you're going to finish the session with me, then you might want to use these next 30 seconds to bring your sentence to a finish, end your piece of dialogue, complete a thought. Maybe you already know there's something right at the front of your brain that you desperately need to scribble down. And before we move on to our reflection, which is how we tend to finish these sessions, I want you to take a moment and think, however this played out, if these two people became part of each other's lives for a long time, and perhaps that simply meant that they were living in the same smallish community where they couldn't help but bump into each other, that might not be a chosen relationship. How do you think their relationship would play out? Would they end up good friends, mortal enemies, the neighbor who makes you slightly irritated, but you can't help but also agree with them on a number of things? Would one of them betray the other in some very meaningful way? All meetings between individual people have the potential to change the lives of both those people standing in the street, asking a simple question and answering it. So, what might the profound change be that happens because these two people know each other? And you're just writing notes. I'm not asking you to do it in full prose. Just what have you tapped into that might develop? And if you're now writing detailed notes about these two people and their relationship in 40 years' time, then you can hit pause again. But if you're finishing the session with me, then we'll carry on and we'll think about a little bit of reflection on what we wrote today. So you can read over what has happened on the page for you in the last sort of 25, 30 minutes. I think what I wanted to do today was to allow you to create some writing that you can look back on and think, okay, when I'm introducing new characters, I know I can describe them physically, and that's why I sort of stepped away from that, is because I'm going to presume that you could all do that. But what else that you've written speaks to you as a writer and you as a reader? So when you read back over your work, did that sense of judgment right at the beginning give you a really good way into that relationship? And you think, yeah, because there was a strong opinion, it seemed to leap off the page. Or maybe it was that memory aspect. that made things real for you, or perhaps it was that sort of single physical element. I went with good hair because I'm always really jealous of people who have really great hair because mine is totally unmanageable. Um, but there can be any number of individual physical characteristics. We're honing in on one, and your opinion, your main character's opinion of it, their jealousy or their judgment can be really effective. Or perhaps it was the moment when their initial assessment began to ebb away a little bit, and they began to regard this person in a little bit more depth, maybe allow their initial idea of them to be overturned. So have feedback and like actually make notes for yourself underneath, like which bit of this felt most effective to you. And also, I've only given you half an hour and a bunch of prompts, right? So you might also note down what feels like it's missing from this introduction that I haven't covered. My aim was certainly not to be comprehensive. That would be a slightly insane task. And actually, I'm sure we'll come back to meeting a new character and do an entirely different workshop on the same topic, just because there are so many ways that we meet people. I also allowed you to create a scene here that might be relatively unpressured. So your characters did not meet each other in a burning building or a massive flood or a spaceship plummeting to a distant planet. They met in a sort of normal everyday scenario. So if you want to continue this writing, perhaps you could think of something that might put them under pressure or add a little bit of danger to their situation, because that allows you to see how your main character reacts, see how the new character reacts, and to see how the relationship between them allows them to cope or makes everything worse. So that's another place that you could take the piece of writing that you've done today. As always, I'd suggest that you read back through your work and that you star or circle round or highlight things that appeal to you about what you've written today. It might just be a lovely turn of phrase, a snappy bit of dialogue, a nice description, maybe even from the very beginning, the location and the setting that we established ourselves. And the reason for doing that is that I'm trying to encourage you to have a notebook as a writer that speaks to you about what you do well and encourages you to flick back through it, be encouraged about your writing practice, and inspire you to develop these ideas, obviously, away from any kind of prompts or books or podcasts or advice, because ultimately, if you want to develop a writing practice that goes on for years and years, that takes you to your first novel and your second novel and your 10th novel, part of that is about sitting down and doing it completely alone, which is really hard when you're a beginner, but is one of the things you develop. And so personally, I feel that, going back through your notes and going back through what you've written has always been really helped me to stay kind of productive and engaged with the creative projects that I'm working on. So if you enjoyed today, then you might want to go back and listen to last week's episode, which was meeting a new place. And next week, I'm going to follow this one up. It's like a series of 3 with meeting a new idea. So that's what's coming up next Saturday. As long as, I don't lose my voice or to get abducted by aliens. All of these things are eminently possible. I really hope you've enjoyed today's session. I am planning now some live workshops at the end of the year. Those will go out on the mailing list. So I'll put a link for you to sign up. If you're not part of the mailing list, then sign up and we'll do some Zoom with some fun, more interactive sessions, because this is great for me because it allows me to like keep going. It's really hard to schedule in kind of your time and my time. But it would be miserable if we never got to see each other and I never got to listen to like the writing that people produce, because that's part of the fun of being a teacher, is listening to what you've written. And unfortunately, What I haven't nailed yet is being able to get that from this podcast. So yeah, keep an eye out for those. And until I see you next time, happy writing.